Sarah Jenkins looked at her watch and sighed. Her flight was delayed again. This was the third time today. The airport was crowded, and angry passengers kept asking her questions she couldn't answer. As a flight attendant for Coastal Airlines, days like this were becoming normal, and she was tired of it. Sarah was 28 years old. She had worked as a flight attendant for 5 years now. When she first got the job, she was so happy. She dreamed of traveling the world, seeing new places, and meeting interesting people. But the reality was very different. She flew the same routes over and over. Chicago to Denver, Denver to Phoenix, Phoenix to Chicago. The same cities, the same problems, the same complaints from passengers. The pay was bad too. Sarah could barely afford her small apartment. She often worked overtime just to make ends meet, and the airline's rules were strict and sometimes made no sense. Sarah had many ideas about how to make things better, both for the staff and the passengers, but nobody ever asked what she thought. Today had been especially bad. A man had yelled at her about his missing bag. Sarah had tried to help, but there was nothing she could do. The bag was lost at another airport. The man wouldn't listen. He called her stupid and useless. Sarah held back tears as other passengers watched. Then her supervisor, Mr. Brooks, called her aside. Instead of supporting her, he gave her a warning. "You need to handle difficult passengers better," he said. "The customer is always right." Sarah wanted to argue, but knew it would only make things worse. Now, sitting at gate B12, Sarah wondered if she should quit. Maybe this job wasn't for her after all. She took out her small notebook from her pocket. It was filled with ideas she had written down over the years. Ideas about how to make the airline better. Ways to help passengers when flights were delayed. Better systems for handling lost bags. Small touches that would make people feel special when they flew Coastal Airlines. Sarah knew her ideas were good, but nobody would ever read them. She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't notice when someone sat down next to her. It was a man in his early 40s, dressed in jeans and a simple button-up shirt. He didn't look like a businessman in his fancy suit or a tourist in bright clothes. He just looked normal. "Rough day?" he asked with a kind smile. Sarah looked up, surprised that someone was talking to her. Most passengers ignored flight attendants when they weren't on the plane. "You have no idea," she said with a small laugh. "Try me," the man said. His voice was warm and friendly. "I've heard my share of airline stories." Something about him made Sarah feel comfortable. Maybe it was because he was a stranger she would never see again. Or maybe it was because she just needed to talk to someone who might understand. "Well," she began, "it started this morning when our crew was told we'd be flying a different route." Sarah found herself telling this stranger everything. About the angry passenger and her unhelpful boss. About her 5 years at Coastal and how her dreams had turned into disappointment. She even mentioned her notebook of ideas. "You have ideas to improve the airline?" the man asked, suddenly very interested. "Lots of them," Sarah said. "But nobody cares what a flight attendant thinks." The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to Sarah with a smile. "I care," he said simply. "Email me your ideas." Sarah took the card and looked down at it. Her heart stopped. The card read, Jack Reynolds, Chief Executive Officer, Coastal Airlines. Sarah looked up in shock, her mouth open. "You're—" Jack smiled again. "Yes, I own this airline, and I think we need to talk more." In that moment, Sarah knew her life was about to change forever. Sarah couldn't sleep that night. She kept looking at Jack Reynolds' business card on her bedside table. The CEO of Coastal Airlines had given her his card and asked for her ideas. It seemed too strange to be real. The next morning, Sarah called in sick. She needed time to think. She sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of coffee and her notebook of ideas. For hours, she wrote everything down on her laptop. All the ideas she had collected over 5 years as a flight attendant. Ideas about how to make passengers happier. Ways to fix problems that happened every day. Better training for flight crews. Sarah knew the airline business from the inside. She had seen what worked and what didn't. She had listened to thousands of passengers talk about what they liked and what they hated. Her ideas were practical and wouldn't cost too much money. At noon, Sarah's finger hovered over the send button on her email. What if this was a joke? What if Jack Reynolds had just been playing with her? Or worse, what if he thought her ideas were stupid? She could lose her job. I have nothing to lose, Sarah finally said to herself, and hit send. She tried to relax for the rest of the day, but she kept checking her phone for a reply. None came. By evening, Sarah felt silly. Of course, the CEO wouldn't read her email. He probably got hundreds every day. He had just been nice to her at the airport. Nothing more. The next morning, Sarah was getting ready for her flight to Denver when her phone rang. The number was not one she knew. "Hello," she answered. "Is this Sarah Jenkins?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, that's me." "This is Linda, Mr. Reynolds' assistant. He asked me to call you. He would like you to come to the main office this afternoon at 2 p.m. Can you make it?" Sarah's heart beat faster. Yes, I can be there." "Good. Please come to the top floor. I'll meet you at the elevator." Sarah called her supervisor and told him she couldn't work her shift. He was angry, but she didn't care. This was more important. She spent extra time getting ready, putting on her nicest clothes instead of her flight attendant uniform. She wanted to look professional. The Coastal Airlines headquarters was in a tall glass building downtown. Sarah had never been there before. Flight attendants never had any reason to visit the main office. She felt out of place as she walked into the fancy lobby. The elevator took her to the top floor. When the doors opened, a well-dressed woman was waiting. "Sarah Jenkins?" the woman asked with a smile. "Yes, that's me. I'm Linda. Please follow me." They walked down a long hallway with glass offices on both sides. People in business suits looked at Sarah as she passed. She felt nervous and out of place. Linda stopped at a large corner office with a beautiful view of the city. "Mr. Reynolds is ready for you," Linda said, opening the door. Jack Reynolds sat behind a large desk but stood up when Sarah entered. He looked different today, wearing a suit instead of casual clothes, but his friendly smile was the same. "Sarah, thank you for coming," he said, shaking her hand. "And thank you for your email. Please, sit down." Sarah sat in a comfortable chair across from him. On Jack's desk, she saw papers with yellow highlighter marks. With a shock, she realized it was her email, printed out. He had not only read it, but had marked parts of it. "I've read your ideas 3 times now," Jack said. "They're excellent." "Really?" Sarah couldn't believe it. "Yes, you understand something that many people in this building have forgotten. You know what our passengers actually want and need." Jack stood up and walked to the window. "Coastal Airlines has been losing money for 2 years now. Our customer satisfaction ratings are terrible. I've been trying to fix things, but nothing has worked." He turned to look at Sarah. "Until now. Your ideas are exactly what we need." "Thank you," Sarah said quietly, still not sure why she was really there. Jack smiled at her. "I'm not just thanking you, Sarah. I'm offering you a job." Sarah stared at Jack in shock. "A job? What kind of job?" "Special Projects Manager," Jack said. "You would report directly to me. Your job would be to make your ideas real." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. Yesterday, she was just a flight attendant. Today, the CEO was offering her a management position. "But I don't have any management experience," Sarah said. "I've never run a project before." Jack sat back down at his desk. "You have 5 years of experience seeing what's wrong with this airline. You know what needs to be fixed better than anyone in this building. I need someone like you. What about my job as a flight attendant? You would leave that position, of course. This job pays 3 times what you make now." Sarah's eyes widened. 3 times her current salary would change her life completely. She could move to a better apartment. She could save money for the future. She could help her parents. When would I start? Sarah asked, still not sure this was really happening. Immediately, Jack said. I'll have HR prepare the paperwork today. As Sarah left the building an hour later, she felt like she was walking on air. She had a new job with a fancy title and a big salary. She would have her own office. She would work directly with the CEO. It was like a dream come true. But the next day, when Sarah arrived for her first day of work, reality hit hard. She was given a small office on the executive floor. People stared at her as she walked by. She could hear them whispering. That's her. The flight attendant. She must know someone important. Sarah tried to ignore them and focus on her work. Jack had given her a clear first assignment. Improve the way coastal airlines handled flight delays. Sarah knew this was a test. If she failed, her dream job would end quickly. She spent her first week talking to different departments. She talked to gate agents about what they needed to help passengers during delays. She talked to pilots about how to better communicate with the ground crew. She talked to the people who planned flight schedules. But everywhere she went, Sarah faced resistance. People didn't want to talk to her. They didn't take her seriously. They saw her as just a flight attendant who got lucky. One afternoon, Sarah was in a meeting with several department heads. She was explaining her ideas for a new system to help passengers during delays. These changes would cost too much, said Tom Garcia, the head of operations. We can't afford it. The costs aren't that high, Sarah argued. And think about how much we would save if passengers were happier. Tom laughed. No offense, but what does a flight attendant know about airline finances? You've been in management for what, a week? Other people in the room smiled or looked down at their papers. Sarah felt her face get hot. She wanted to run from the room. But then she remembered why Jack had hired her. He believed in her ideas. I may be new to management, Sarah said calmly, but I've seen thousands of angry passengers during delays. I know what makes them angry, and I know what would make them feel better. That's something you can't learn sitting in this office. The room went quiet. Tom looked surprised that Sarah had stood up to him. After the meeting, Sarah went back to her office and closed the door. She felt tired and alone. Maybe this job was a mistake after all. Maybe she didn't belong here. There was a knock at her door. It was Linda, Jack's assistant. Mr. Reynolds wants to see you, she said. Sarah's heart sank. Had someone complained about her? Was she going to be fired after just 1 week? When she entered Jack's office, he was looking at reports on his desk. I heard about your meeting with Tom, Jack said, not looking up. I'm sorry if I... Sarah started. Jack looked up and smiled. Don't apologize. Tom called me to complain, but he also admitted your ideas were good. He's just upset because you challenged him. Jack put down his papers. That's exactly why I hired you, Sarah. Don't stop now. For the first time that week, Sarah smiled. Maybe she did belong here after all. After her talk with Jack, Sarah returned to her office with new energy. She would not give up. She would prove to everyone that she belonged here. But she needed a new plan. The big meetings weren't working. People like Tom would always fight her ideas. Sarah needed to show that her ideas worked, not just talk about them. That night, Sarah had an idea. What if she tested her ideas on just a few flights? She didn't need permission from the whole company. She just needed to convince a few flight crews to try her ideas. The next day, Sarah called her old friend Maria, who was still a flight attendant. I need your help, Sarah said. Can you meet me for coffee? At the coffee shop, Sarah explained her plan to Maria. I want to test my ideas on your flights for 1 week. Small things that will make passengers happier when there are delays. What kind of things? Maria asked. Giving passengers free snacks during delays. Better information about why the flight is delayed and when it will leave. Special help for passengers who might miss connecting flights. Maria smiled. That sounds great. My crew would love to make passengers happier. But who will pay for the extra snacks? I will, Sarah said. From my own money. I just need to prove these ideas work. Maria agreed to help. She talked to her flight crew, and they were excited to try Sarah's ideas. 2 other flight crews also agreed to join the test. For the next week, Sarah's ideas were used on 6 flights that had delays. The flight attendants gave out free snacks and drinks. They made sure every passenger knew exactly why the flight was delayed. They helped people with connecting flights make new plans. The results were amazing. Passengers on these flights gave much higher ratings than normal. They wrote nice comments about the airline. Some even sent thank you emails. Sarah collected all this information. She made a report with clear numbers showing how much happier passengers were. She included the nice comments, and she calculated how little it had cost to make these big improvements. Then she asked for a meeting with Jack and the department heads. When Sarah walked into the meeting room, she felt nervous again. Tom Garcia was there, looking unhappy as usual. But this time, Sarah had real results to share. Last week, we tested some simple ideas on 6 delayed flights. Sarah began. She showed them the report. As you can see, passenger satisfaction went up by 60%. Complaints went down by 45%, and it only cost $5 per passenger. Tom looked at the numbers with surprise. How do we know these numbers are real? I can give you the names of all the flight crews involved, Sarah said, and you can read the passenger comments yourself. Another department head spoke up. This is impressive, Sarah, but 6 flights is a small test. Would this work across the whole airline? That's what I want to find out, Sarah said. I'm asking for permission to test these ideas on all flights for 1 month. The room was quiet as everyone looked at the report again. Finally, Jack spoke. I think the numbers speak for themselves, he said. Sarah's ideas are working. Let's try them for 1 month on all flights. Tom started to argue, but Jack held up his hand. We've tried doing things your way for 2 years, Tom. It's time to try something new. As people left the meeting, several of them stopped to congratulate Sarah. Even Tom gave her a small nod of respect. Back in her office, Sarah called Maria with the good news. They approved the full test. Your flights will get official support now, not just my money. That's great, Maria said. You know, people are talking about you. All the flight attendants. They say you're fighting for changes that will help everyone. Sarah smiled. For the first time, she felt like she was making a real difference. She was no longer just the flight attendant who got lucky. She was becoming a leader that people believed in. There was a knock at her door. It was Linda. Jack wants you to know that he's increased your project budget, and he's giving you a small team to help implement your ideas. Sarah thanked her, then sat back in her chair, amazed at how quickly things were changing. In just 3 weeks, she had gone from being ignored to leading an important project with her own team. This was just the beginning. 6 months had passed since Sarah's ideas were first tested on those 6 flights. Now, her changes were used on all Coastal Airlines flights. The results were even better than anyone had expected. Passenger complaints were down by 70%. More people were choosing to fly with Coastal. The airline was making more money, and the workers were happier too. Sarah's small team had grown to 15 people. They worked on many different projects to make the airline better. Sarah had her own large office now, with a view almost as good as Jack's. One morning, Sarah was in a meeting with her team when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Linda. Turn on the news. Channel 8. Now. Sarah excused herself and went to her office. She turned on the small TV on her wall. A big storm was hitting the East Coast. All airports in New York, Boston, and Philadelphia were closed. Thousands of flights were canceled. Sarah's phone rang. It was Jack. Are you watching the news? He asked. Yes, it looks bad. It's terrible. All airlines are in trouble right now. But this is a chance to show how good your new systems are. Can your team handle it? Sarah thought for a moment. Her team had created new ways to help passengers during problems, but they had never faced something this big. We can handle it, Sarah said with confidence. "I'll get everyone working on it right now." For the next 3 days, Sarah barely slept. Her team worked around the clock. They made sure that every passenger got clear information about their flights. They helped people find hotels when they were stuck. They rebooked thousands of people on new flights. They even arranged buses to take some people to nearby cities where flights were still leaving. On the 4th day, the storm ended. Airports opened again. Things slowly went back to normal. Sarah finally went home and slept for 12 hours straight. When she returned to the office, everyone was smiling at her. People she didn't even know stopped to say hello or give her a thumbs up. It was strange. In her office, she found Jack waiting for her. He was holding a newspaper. "Have you seen this?" he asked, handing it to her. The headline read, "Airlines fail during storm, but one shines." The story talked about how all airlines had problems during the storm, but Coastal Airlines had done an amazing job taking care of its passengers. There were quotes from happy customers praising the airline. One man said, "Coastal Airlines treated us like real people, not just ticket numbers." "There's more," Jack said, handing her more newspapers and printouts of online stories. All of them praised Coastal Airlines. The airline was being called a model for the industry. "Your systems worked perfectly," Jack said. "No other airline came close to handling this as well as we did. The phones are ringing off the hook with new business customers wanting to switch to Coastal." Sarah smiled, proud of what her team had done. "There's something else," Jack continued. "The board of directors is very impressed. They've approved a new position, Vice President of Customer Experience, and they want you for the job." Sarah's mouth fell open. Vice President. Just 7 months ago, she had been a flight attendant thinking about quitting. Now she was being offered one of the top jobs in the company. I don't know what to say," Sarah stammered. "Say yes," Jack laughed. "You've earned it." Sarah was about to answer when her office door burst open. It was Maria, still in her flight attendant uniform. "Sarah, have you seen the news? Everyone is talking about Coastal. And all the flight attendants know it's because of your changes." Maria rushed over and hugged her. "You're a hero to the whole crew." As Sarah hugged her friend back, she caught Jack's eye. He was smiling proudly. This was more than just a job now. This was a chance to change the whole airline industry. And it had all started with that strange meeting at the airport gate. "Yes," Sarah said to Jack. "I accept the position." 1 year after Sarah became Vice President of Customer Experience, Coastal Airlines was a different company. It was now one of the most successful airlines in the country. Passengers loved it. Workers were happy. And the company was making a lot of money. Sarah's office was now on the top floor, just down the hall from Jack's. Her team had grown to 50 people. She had become an important leader in the company. Everyone respected her ideas. But one morning, Jack called Sarah into his office with a worried look on his face. "We have a problem," he said, showing her a report. "Blue Sky Airlines is taking our business travelers." Sarah looked at the numbers. Blue Sky was a smaller airline, but it was growing fast. They had new planes with better seats for business travelers. They had faster Wi-Fi. They had better food. And they were taking Coastal's most valuable customers. "This is serious," Sarah said. "Business travelers pay the highest fares. We need them." "Exactly," Jack agreed. "And I want you to fix this problem." Sarah was surprised. "Me? But this is more than just customer experience. This is about our planes, our prices, everything." Jack nodded. "I know. That's why I'm giving you full control over this project. Whatever you need to do, do it. Just get those business travelers back." This was Sarah's biggest challenge yet. For the next month, she worked harder than ever before. She traveled to meet important business clients who had switched to Blue Sky. She flew on Blue Sky flights to see what they offered. She studied everything about business travel. Back at Coastal, Sarah put together a special team with people from different departments. They worked day and night on a plan to win back the business travelers. Finally, Sarah was ready to present her plan to Jack and the board of directors. As she walked into the boardroom, she felt nervous. This was bigger than anything she had done before. "Thank you for coming," Sarah began. "As you know, we're losing business travelers to Blue Sky Airlines. Today, I'm going to show you how we can win them back." Sarah showed slides with numbers and pictures. Her plan was to completely change Coastal's business class. New, more comfortable seats, better food from famous chefs, faster Wi-Fi, special lounges at airports, and a new service where business travelers could have a car waiting for them when they landed. When she finished, the room was quiet. Then the finance director spoke up. "This plan would cost millions of dollars," he said with a frown. "It's too expensive. We can't afford it." Others nodded in agreement. Sarah had expected this. She clicked to her next slide. "Yes, it will cost money," she said. "But look at these numbers. We will lose even more money if we do nothing. And my calculations show that these changes will pay for themselves in just 8 months. Sarah showed more slides with detailed numbers. She had worked with financial experts to make sure her plan made sense. Plus, she added, "We don't have to do everything at once. We can start with the most important changes and add more later." The board members looked at each other. Some seemed convinced, others still had doubts. Jack stood up. "I've reviewed Sarah's plan in detail. It's solid. And I remind everyone that 3 years ago, Coastal Airlines was losing money until Sarah's ideas turned things around. I think we should trust her again." Sarah held her breath as the board voted. One by one, they raised their hands in support. Her plan was approved. As people left the meeting, many stopped to congratulate Sarah. Even the finance director gave her a respectful nod. Jack walked over with a big smile. "Well done. That was impressive." "Thank you for supporting me," Sarah said. "I'll always support good ideas," Jack replied. "Now the hard part begins, making this plan happen." Sarah nodded. She knew the next few months would be challenging, but she also knew she was ready for it. She wasn't just the former flight attendant anymore. She was a leader that people trusted and respected. And it had all started with 9 simple words at an airport. "I care. Email me your ideas. I own this airline." 6 months after the board meeting, Sarah's plan for the new business class was becoming real. The first planes with the new seats were flying. The special airport lounges were open. The new food service was getting good reviews. Business travelers were coming back to Coastal Airlines. One morning, Sarah was drinking coffee in her office when her assistant brought in a business magazine. "You might want to see this," the assistant said with a smile. Sarah looked at the magazine. Her own face was on the cover. The headline read, "From Cabin Crew to Corporate Visionary, the Woman Changing Air Travel." Sarah couldn't believe it. She opened the magazine with shaking hands and read the article. It told her whole story. How she had been a flight attendant with a notebook full of ideas. How she had met Jack by chance at an airport. How she had risen quickly to become one of the most important executives at Coastal Airlines. The article praised her ideas and her leadership. It talked about how she understood both the workers and the passengers because she had been a flight attendant herself. It called her the most innovative mind in the airline industry today. Sarah's phone started ringing. Friends and family were calling to congratulate her about the magazine. Even her old supervisor, Mr. Brooks, called to say he was proud of her. Later that day, Jack came to her office. "Quite a story," he said, holding the magazine. "They got most of it right, too." "It's a bit embarrassing," Sarah admitted. "I don't need this kind of attention." "Maybe not, but you deserve it," Jack said. "And it's good for the airline. People like success stories." Over the next few weeks, Sarah received many phone calls from other companies. They all wanted to hire her away from Coastal Airlines. They offered her more money, bigger offices, fancier titles. But Sarah wasn't interested. She was happy at Coastal. This was where her ideas had come to life. Then one day, Linda called Sarah. "Jack wants to see you right away." When Sarah entered Jack's office, He was talking with several board members. They all looked serious. "Sarah, good timing," Jack said. "We were just discussing some big news. Robert Chen is retiring as Senior Vice President of Operations." Robert was one of the most powerful people in the company. His job was huge, overseeing all daily operations of the airline. "We need to announce his replacement soon," a board member said. Sarah nodded. "Who are you considering for the position?" The board members looked at each other. Then they looked at Jack. "Many people think you should get the job," Jack said. "You've proven yourself on every project. You know the airline inside and out." Sarah was stunned. Senior Vice President of Operations was just one step below the CEO. I'm honored," she said, "but there must be other candidates with more experience." "There are," Jack agreed, "and the board has decided to give the job to William Foster." Sarah knew William. He had been with the airline for 20 years. He was very experienced. "He's a good choice," Sarah said, trying to hide her disappointment. She had hoped, just for a moment, that they were offering her the job. Jack must have seen her face fall. "William is the safe choice," he said, "but I didn't call you here to talk about his promotion." "You didn't?" "No," Jack said with a smile. "I called you here because we have something else planned for you, something bigger." Sarah looked confused. What could be bigger than Senior Vice President? A board member spoke up. "Coastal Airlines is growing fast, especially since your business class redesign. We're making record profits. The board has decided it's time to expand. We're going to launch a new airline," Jack explained. "A separate company focused on a different market, and we want you to lead it as president." Sarah couldn't speak. President of a new airline. It was bigger than anything she had imagined. "We need someone with fresh ideas," Jack continued. "Someone who isn't stuck in old ways of thinking. Someone like you." Sarah found her voice at last. "When would this happen?" "Immediately," Jack said. "If you accept." Sarah looked around at the board members. They were all watching her, waiting for her answer. 3 years ago, she had been a flight attendant thinking of quitting. Now she was being offered the chance to run her own airline. "Yes," she said firmly. "I accept." Leading the new airline, called Skyline, was the hardest job Sarah had ever had. As president, she was now responsible for everything. She had to hire staff, choose planes, pick routes, create a brand, and 100 other things. The pressure was huge. This wasn't just a project anymore. This was an entire company with hundreds of employees. Their jobs depended on Sarah making good decisions. Jack and the board had given Sarah a clear goal. Skyline should be different from other airlines. It would focus on young travelers and vacation routes. It would have lower prices but still feel special. Sarah's first challenge was finding the right people. She needed managers who believed in her vision, people who weren't stuck in old ways of thinking. First, she hired Maria, her friend from her flight attendant days. Maria was now Skyline's head of cabin crew training. Then she found a young finance expert who had fresh ideas about airline pricing. She hired an operations manager who had worked at smaller airlines and knew how to keep costs down. Together, they built a team that was unlike any other airline management team. They were younger, more women, more people of different backgrounds, people who thought differently. Next came the hard work of starting the airline. They had to buy planes, design uniforms, create a website, train staff, get permits from the government. Each step was difficult and took longer than planned. The biggest problem was with the new planes. The company that made them was months behind schedule. This meant Skyline's first flights would be delayed. Then there were money problems. Starting an airline cost more than anyone expected. Sarah had to find ways to cut costs without hurting the quality of the airline. Some nights, Sarah stayed in her office until midnight, looking at papers and making difficult decisions. There were times when she wondered if she had made a mistake taking this job. Leading a project was one thing. Leading a whole company was much harder. One evening, Jack stopped by Sarah's office. He found her surrounded by papers, looking tired. "Tough day?" he asked. Sarah sighed. "Tough month. The planes are delayed again. Training is taking longer than planned, and we're spending too much money before we've even started flying." Jack nodded. "Starting an airline is hard. That's why most people don't try." "Did I make a mistake?" Sarah asked quietly. "Taking this job?" Jack shook his head. "No, you were the right choice. But no one said it would be easy." His words helped, but Sarah still had many problems to solve. The biggest came just a week before Skyline's first scheduled flight. One of their main investors pulled out. They suddenly had much less money than they needed. Many people would have given up, but not Sarah. She worked day and night to find a solution. She cut unnecessary costs. She found cheaper ways to do important things. And she personally called new investors, explaining her vision for Skyline with such passion that they agreed to help. The day of the first Skyline flight finally arrived. It was from Chicago to Miami, a route that Sarah had chosen herself. The bright blue Skyline plane sat at the gate, ready for its first passengers. Sarah stood on the tarmac watching as people boarded. The flight crew, trained under Maria's program, greeted each person with a special welcome. The pilot, a woman that Sarah had hired herself, waved from the cockpit window. As the plane filled with its first passengers, Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Getting to this moment had been so hard. There had been so many problems, so many times when it seemed impossible. But they had done it. Skyline was real. The plane's engine started. The ground crew pulled away the stairs. Slowly, the blue plane began to move toward the runway. Sarah watched as it gathered speed and lifted into the air. Her airline, her dream, flying at last. Her phone rang. It was Jack. "How does it feel?" he asked, "watching your airline take off?" Sarah couldn't find the words at first. "It feels amazing," she finally said, "like watching your child take their first steps." "You should be proud," Jack said. "What you've done is incredible." As she watched the plane become a small dot in the sky, Sarah knew he was right. From flight attendant to airline president in just 3 years, it was incredible. And it had all started with a chance meeting at an airport gate. 3 years had passed since Skyline's first flight. The small airline that Sarah had started now had 30 planes. They flew to 15 countries. They had won awards for their service and their special attention to passengers. Sarah sat in her large office in the Skyline headquarters. On her wall hung pictures of Skyline's first plane, her first flight crew, and the magazine cover with her face on it. But her favorite item was in a small frame on her desk, Jack's business card that he had given her that day at the airport. Skyline was a success story that people talked about in the airline industry. What made it special was that Sarah had brought her flight attendant experience to everything they did. The staff were treated well. The passengers felt cared for. Everyone who flew Skyline said it felt different from other airlines. Sarah was looking at reports when her assistant knocked on the door. "There's a young woman here to see you," the assistant said. "She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." Sarah sighed. She was very busy. But she remembered how Jack had taken time to talk to her when she was just a flight attendant. "Send her in," Sarah said. A young woman in a Skyline flight attendant uniform entered the office. She looked nervous, clutching the small notebook in her hands. "Ms. Jenkins, I'm Emily Chen. I'm sorry to bother you. I know you must be very busy." "It's all right," Sarah said with a smile. "What can I help you with?" Emily took a deep breath. "I've been a flight attendant with Skyline for 6 months now, and I've been writing down some ideas." She held up her notebook. "Ideas about how we could make things even better for our passengers." Sarah stared at the young woman. It was like looking at herself from years ago. "I showed my ideas to my supervisor," Emily continued, "but she said they were too expensive. But I really think they would work. So I thought, maybe I could show them to you." Sarah smiled and gestured to the chair across from her desk. "I have time now. Tell me everything." For the next hour, Sarah listened as Emily shared her ideas. Some were simple, some were creative. All of them showed that Emily truly cared about making the airline better. When Emily finished, Sarah nodded. "These are excellent ideas, Emily. I'd like you to work with our customer experience team to see which ones we can implement right away." Emily's eyes widened. "Really? You like them?" "I do," Sarah said. "And I think you might have a future beyond being a flight attendant. Would you be interested in joining our development team?" Emily couldn't speak for a moment. "Yes, I would love that." After Emily left, Sarah looked out her window at a Skyline plane taking off. Her phone rang. It was Jack. "I was just calling to tell you the news," Jack said. "Coastal and Skyline together have been named Airline Group of the Year." "That's wonderful," Sarah said. "We've come a long way." "Not bad for someone who was ready to quit the industry a few years ago," Jack laughed. Sarah looked at his business card on her desk. It all changed with 9 words. "I care. Email me your ideas. I own this airline." "Those were the best words I ever spoke," Jack said. "Trusting you was the best decision I ever made." After they hung up, Sarah opened her desk drawer and took out her old flight attendant wings. She kept them to remember where she had started. To remember that good ideas can come from anywhere in a company. To remember that one conversation can change a life. Sarah thought about Emily and her notebook of ideas. The young woman reminded Sarah so much of herself. Maybe Emily would also rise through the ranks. Maybe one day she would lead her own airline. Sarah made a note to check on Emily's progress in a few weeks. To make sure her ideas were being taken seriously. To make sure she had the support she needed. Outside Sarah's window, another Skyline plane lifted into the air. It carried hundreds of passengers. It carried Emily's future possibilities. And it carried the legacy of a chance meeting between a tired flight attendant and an airline owner who was willing to listen. Sarah smiled. Her career had changed in a moment, and now she had the chance to change someone else's.